Now we have a panel discussion on innovation in technical and vocational education, creating skilled manpower for Industry 4.0. I would like to invite Arpit Gupta, Assistant Editor, ET Government, to moderate the discussion. Over to you, Arpit.
Dear viewers and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel discussion Innovation in Technical and Vocational Education, Creating Skilled Manpower for Industry 4.0 and Self-Reliant India, part of second edition of ET Government Education, Innovation and Skill Summit 2021. With the clarion call of Prime Minister to build India Atmanirbhar, the youth of country need skills that make them self-confident, reliant, purpose-driven and also future-ready. The higher education sector should dedicatedly work on improving the higher education curriculum by introducing skill and technology-based knowledge experience and join hands or build partnerships with business industry and skill assessment organizations to contribute to reforming hands-on learning strategies and to boost the entrepreneurship ecosystem. On behalf of the ET government, I, Arpit Gupta, welcome our esteemed panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, to lead the panel, I am joined by eminent leaders, Dr. Nirmaljeet Singh Kalsi, Chairman, National Council for Vocational Education and Training, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. He will also chair the panel discussion today. Thank you for joining us, sir. I am joined by Mr. Andhra Vamsi, Mission Director, Uttar Pradesh Skill Development Mission, UPSDM, Government of Uttar Pradesh. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Vamsi. Dr. Sridhar Srivastava, In charge Director, National Council of Education Research and Training, NCRT, Ministry of Education, Government of India, and Professor Ambrish S. Vidyarthi, Vice Chancellor, Bikaner Technical University, Rajasthan. Thank you for joining all the eminent panelists. As the chair of the session, I would request Dr. Nirmaljeet Singh Kalsi for his initial remarks on innovation in technical and vocational education, creating skilled manpower for Industry 4.0 and self-reliant India. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for having us on this panel on innovation in technical and vocational education, especially for creating skilled manpower for Industry 4.0 and making a self-reliant India. Now, the points of discussions for today's panel discussion would be integration of skills in higher and technical education for Industry 4.0 and self-reliant India, fostering new age skills and innovation to ready future workforce as well as the existing workforce, automation and digitization in technical education for the future industrialization, and challenges and way forward in technical and vocational education in the globalization era. So these are the 4 points which we would be taking up for discussion. So before we start the discussion, I would like to set the stage for discussion by discussing the vision of Skill India. Now, vision of Skill India clearly has quality of skills at par with global standards and realize the full demographic dividends. Also, revisiting, designing and delivery and revamping of skilling framework and the processes, reinventing skilling, reskilling, RPL and upskilling, and then integrating and embedding skilling into higher education, technical education, and also the school education, providing for new age future skills, and that is Industry 4.0 and beyond, and then making skilling outcome centric, both for employment as well as for entrepreneurship, successfully implementing Atmanirbhar Bharat, and train globally competitive skilled workforce for, say, SEZ, manufacturing clusters, mega projects, and scientific skill needs of the country. So that's the vision. And if I come to vision of the vocational education training, that is achieving global skill standards for making India the skill capital of the world, as the Honorable Prime Minister says it. Making VET aspirational, paying dignified career options, and integration with the education as such, including school education, higher education, and technical education. Then lifelong learning, incorporation of skilling, in every aspect of life, every area of education, effectively addressing the existing and future skill gaps, and then development and qualitative improvement in education while having a very light but tight regulatory framework by empowering the stakeholders, enhancing productivity of the existing workforce, and then robust credit framework for credit assignment, accumulation, transfer, both for horizontal and vertical pathways, then leverage existing public infrastructure and industry facilities, and enable blended mode of learning, that is online, digital, and physical, both for learning as well as for assessment. So that's the overall vision we are talking about. So with this vision, now I would like to make the floor open for further discussions.
Thank you, Kalsi sir, for setting up the context and opening the floor for the discussion. So let me begin the discussion by asking first question to the Managing Director of Uttar Pradesh Skill Development Mission, Mr. Andhra Vamsi. Sir, it has become necessary to impart newer skills in technical and vocational education to meet the demands of Industry 4.0 and build a self-reliant India, as Kalsi sir has said. How the UPSDM is creating various skill development programs in the curriculum and syllabus of technical and vocational education to bridge the gap of demand supply of required skilled manpower, and how are you providing employability to the masses? Over to you.
Yeah, I have some data with me for the last 2-3 days. I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, there were 12 lakhs who had been trained and 5 lakhs who had been placed. But the immediate challenge before all of us right now is there were many people who had been trained. They had been placed also. We were keeping a track upon their placement, but all the value addition that had been imparted to them throughout this entire skill development mission or post skill development mission placement has not been digitized, or that database management has not been done. If you start with me only, or if you start with a gentleman sitting in front of me, all of us must have gone through some or other kind of placements. Okay. A placement can be for a skilled component or a semi-skilled component or for some unskilled component also. But that was long time back. If I've been placed in 2005, then 2006 I've been placed again, but I'm not over there. I've been placed again in some government service in 2008. I've been placed again in 2011. Now I'm standardized in 2011. So the valuation that had been given through each and every skill also counts a lot of, plays a lot of important role. And training them and placing them is not the only task that we have to do. It is something big. Whatever the human resource that you have trained up or placed, they are further elevated into other positions. So that particular database management system is missing in this particular mission, which I have seen so far. So that data has to be collected and it has to be collaged. Okay, then we will understand, yes, what all value addition that we had given to that particular child and how he had been, or he or she had been placed, and what all they have been doing right from the date of their passing out to till date. So that is one suggestion which I want to put forth. Second, government will always have so many numbers that we have done these many projects or we have done these many PIAs, GTPs, flexi partners, or PTPs, or training, or placements, whatever it is. So, in terms of quality assessment, whether we have been able to do the things qualitatively or not can be ascertained only by the database which we will be collecting hence. So, that is my first priority here. Second priority, so far the skill development mission had been confined to the state specific needs. So NCVET, a couple of days back, I have attended a conference in NCVET in Delhi. So madam had presided the thing, and the chairperson had told us one important thing. Let us not focus upon state specific things. Whatever the skill component that you are inducing should be pan-Indian in approach. So for example, if you speak about India, it is very vast, and the specifications for a skilled component in Coimbatore is different when compared to the specifications of a skilled component in Vijayawada. The same logic applies to Hyderabad, even the same logic applies to Pune, and even the same logic applies to Nagpur. As my previous assignment being district collector of Jhansi, I got the opportunity to see, or I got the rarest exposure to see the migrant labor moving from Bombay to the eastern parts of UP as well as Bihar. The same migrant labor moving from Delhi to other parts of Madhya Pradesh as well as to Uttar Pradesh, South Uttar Pradesh. They are all skilled components. They are very good. They are very good at their particular skill. They are very good at their particular. I don't even like to use this word migrant labor because they are skilled people. That was a time when they have thought that okay, let us go to our home, maybe for other reasons. But the way that I've seen a lot of people who had been settled in Bombay, born in Uttar Pradesh, and those people who had been the bread and butter for the enterprise over there in Surat, Ahmedabad, as well as Bombay, as well as Pune and Nashik, even in Delhi and the peripherals of Delhi, this entire particular component, or the human resource component, we didn't create a database for that. That database has to be created again. That's the second priority. The third priority that has to be taken again into consideration is there is a lot of human resource that has been trained by the ITIs, that has been trained by the polytechnics, or that has been trained by the semi-skilled institutes. That particular data is also not being summated because so everyone is working in silos. Now we should follow a uniform and umbrella pattern instead of going for a top-down approach. Let us go for a bottom-up approach. That's what the chairperson of NCBET had suggested us. So, and the demand should be in such a way that whatever the specifications of, for example, a place like LAP, or a place like Coimbatore, or a place like Salem, or a place like Arakkonam, or a place like Madras. So there the human resource requirement is exclusively meant for a particular skill. And across India, you may have human resource traveling from here to that place or that place to this place. But if you are able to switch that particular button or switch on that particular button and hit it bang on the target, that yes, Salem needs this much trained skill for the steel industry. Coimbatore needs this much of a trained skill, skilled manpower for the textile industry. The same logic applies to Visakhapatnam port. The same logic applies to Bombay port. So these are the people who can really make a difference. So that pan-Indian approach is missing, and that is the third priority. And fourth priority, that is the employee or the labor or the blue collar or the white collar related laws. That's the labor laws basically. Whether these laws are being followed strictly or not is one thing that we have to work on. So as per the initial hearings with the NCBET, as per the initial discussions here for the last 2 or 3 days, with my minimal exposure, I can figure out this thing. And as the time goes, we can even come out with so many creative things and creative approaches. And we can also ensure that the manpower will be taken from the enterprise themselves directly. We will train that manpower. And we will ensure that this amount of manpower is available in the entire nation so that people can click this button, they can hire this manpower, and that's how the employment generation can be sustained, as well as the so-called enterprise growth can also be sustained. So we should focus more upon a sustainable placement rather than a placement, a sustainable job rather than a job, and a sustainable enterprise rather than enterprising. So that's the crux of the thing which I want to mention. And rest of things, let me go through and analyze the things. We will come with a solid idea. I mean, it's such a creative field. You get ideas floating every hour. So let us make a yearly action plan and execute this. As simple. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vansi. Sir, the job market is changing rapidly, especially in the post-COVID world, creating an overpowering need for a skilled workforce to meet the demands of the new set of skills, quality and relevance as expected from the industry. Let me go to Mr. Sridhar. Sir, how do you view fostering new age skills and innovations in technical and vocational education to ready future workforce as well as existing workforce?
Thank you for this opportunity of interaction. The question that you posed to me, in fact, our take on national education policy and the things which have been posited there about the skill and vocational and technical education is through the curriculum framework that we are going to enact. You know, for that curriculum framework, the agenda before us is that we are trying to reimagine vocational and skill education. In fact, if you ask to me, I would say that skill education is also very important in the sense that any child who is taking whatever course, be it science or arts or commerce or any other the vocational education, we are seeing that skill is required for any child. In fact, if in a very precise manner, any education without skill or enterprise entrepreneurship is not going to sustain in the coming time. So, as the policy says, we will be making vocational exposure at the stage of 6th, 7th, 8th. And there the exposure will be just for appreciating the dignity for labor and the dignity for different kind of vocation which is around the child. But on the skill front, if the child is studying science, mathematics, or languages, the child should be filled with the 21st century skills, and the child should be able to communicate well, creativity, thinking, innovation, collaboration, empathy, all these kind of 21st century skills also has to be there in the child. Because what we are finding that when the child is joining any industry also, by the virtue of his or her competence, these kind of skills are required there. And one more important skill is very much required, that child should be able to relearn, unlearn, de-learn, relearn. So these kind of skills are also required, because in the present time, as you saw the COVID scenario and all, we have to prepare child not for the first job. We have to prepare child for many more jobs that the child may need in future to move from one job to different job. So we are trying to see all these things in a very holistic manner, right from the, you can say, preparatory, middle stage and secondary stage. Foundational stage also, it will not be in that manner like skill per se, but we will be trying to develop these kind of trust among the children. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Let me take initial remarks from Professor Vidyarthi as well. Sir, how to bridge the gap of demand and supply of required skill, manpower, and to provide employability to the masses? So what are views on that?
Thank you very much for inviting me for this panel discussion. My, the submission before I say that the industry requirement and the manpower training required for the, technical and vocational courses. Let us talk about the industry and the nature, business of the industry, how they are, working or doing the business. There are number of, variety of the jobs available. One is for regular jobs, which the soft floor, jobs, which has to be, conducted by, many workers, engineers, doctors, or whatever you can say. And some specialized jobs, which are very specific to a particular domain of knowledge or the training, and some niche area or strategic the component where specialized and futuristic the thinking is required. So if you all together talk about that the industry, so I think that may not be appropriate to discuss on this. Higher education institutions like the PTU, we have fully understood the dynamics of the industry and their requirement by interaction with a number of peoples. And definitely, if you talk about the technical education or technical graduates, which is coming from these universities, definitely they have the set of the skills along with this, because the what you can say the skill, they have the skill because they are studying continuously with a practical exposure and the field trials on a particular the subject or branch, whatever you can say. So we have to think about those the people who are going to, hold the key jobs in the industry or its strategic positions. So for that, I think we are really thankful to the government of India for, providing the draft of national education policies 2020. And they have come up with a very good, the vision and holistic development of any of the graduate or postgraduate or studying in the lower, the classes for the overall development, and given the flexibility to the students to come up with those kind of or fulfill their aspiration from the, the institutions, and they can design their own course of the studies. And similarly, that has given the flexibility to, integrate the number of institutions who are specialized in a particular, domain of knowledge. So if these kind of things club together, then definitely our graduates would be much more, competitive and employable, definitely. So this one. But during that, as the, Dr. Kalsi was mentioning, that we have to look at overall, the skill development, and which is required basically, or that is the basis of, Atmanirbhar Bharat. So for Atmanirbhar Bharat, we require a lot of, the infrastructure, that has to be created, and it's open to all. Then only, and then the skill, specialized skill for a particular job. Now, also the BTU, as such, in the state of the Rajasthan was the, I think, probably the first university which come out with the, the syllabus or curriculum of the, various programs like the artificial intelligence, data science, and other institutions, and made exactly on the basis of the NEP, which has recommendation that what kind of the things would be. So if we look at, if we are thinking of the strategic position, I think we have to work these institutions like the university and the institutional education institution has to work, quite differently. We should envisage that what is going to happen in near future, 20 years, after, after 30 years or 50 years, and then we have to open up. Basically, the present system is those providing the fulfilling the need of the industry and the higher education is still that is very rigid, and due to the rigidity, we are bound to a number of functional and hierarchical, the silo, and that has to be open, because if we start making those kind of things under the certain framework, so as we are more structured, more open for each and everybody, then we cannot go for we cannot plan the strategic one. So as you are not predicting that which company is going to, launch the new products. Like sometime we are expecting that the software will come from the Microsoft first, but it is another company is coming out. So similarly, we have to also work together, and some of the programs should be made for open for all, but some of the programs which has to be non-structured, and it should be open for the competitive environment. Then only we can fulfill that particular requirement of the strategic components. So I think that we are moving in the right direction. All the India, all over the institution is working in hard to, come up with this issue also, so that we can get the, fulfill the requirement and make the futuristic people ready for the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vidyarthi. I would request Dr. Nirmaljit Singh Kalsi to please talk about NCVT initiatives in this regard, and if you have any remark or any question to the panelists on the first round of discussion. Over to you, sir.
I would like to give some additional information on the integration and embedding of vocational education and training into the technical and higher education institution as well as in the school education system. As I already said, that vocational education training needs to be made aspirational and embedded as part of the integral part of the higher education, also education in the schools and colleges as per NEP 2020. And we have to focus on the courses in the new age technologies. And these new age technologies, such as Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, blockchain, wireless networking technologies, embedded software, cybersecurity, penetration testing, robotics, automation, NPL, augmented and virtual reality, data sciences, cryptology, application infrastructure and software, human computer interaction, mobility, cloud computing, virtualization, you name it, it's there. At the same time, we must also have special emphasis on the higher order learning skills, such as analysis, evaluation, synthesis, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, innovation, etc. Now, while conducting these skill courses, we have to have practical training and internship as part of the program. Also, along with theory, you have to have on the job training and internships, which will really make it very, very complete. Now, for this purpose, government is thinking in terms of leveraging the existing infrastructure of skill ecosystem like ITIs, polytechnics, PMKKs, PMKBY centers, training providers, training centers, and other underutilized training facilities in the technical education institution system. For example, there are 3,500 polytechnics and about the same number of engineering colleges which would have additional space available for conducting these kind of training. Now, the entire skilling system is dependent on something called SSCs, Sector Skill Councils, and awarding bodies. Now, these are the bodies which are developing qualifications as per the requirement of the industry. And then there are assessment agencies which assess the students after the student gets trained. And after the assessment, the student is certified by the awarding body. So the sector skill councils are also the awarding bodies. So far, NCVT has approved more than 4,500 qualifications which have been developed by the skilling ecosystem. Now, these qualifications are not developed by NCVT. These are developed by the sector skill councils and the awarding bodies who understand the requirement of the skilled manpower in the market. NCVT only approved these qualifications as per NSQF alignment, National Skill Qualification Framework alignment. And then these SSCs and ABs, they also train the trainers and assessors for the training centers and for the assessment agencies. They also do that. Now, just coming to the basic role of NCVT, if I may say so, NCVT's main functions: development and qualitative improvement of vocational education training, then National Skill Qualification Framework alignment and approval of qualification, maintaining National Qualification Register, we call it NQR, and National Occupation Standards, we call it NOS in short. So there are about 4,500 qualifications and there are about 32,000 NOSes as we speak. Also, one of the main functions of NCVT is granting recognition, regulation, and monitoring of the functioning of various bodies, namely the awarding bodies, assessment agencies, skill information providers, training bodies, through the awarding bodies, and then along with the government also create guidelines for the skill universities. Another function is research and development in vocational education training and skilling information consolidation and dissemination. Then grievance redressal pertaining to any of these bodies which we are governing, and then perform other functions including sector skill councils, international recognitions, and international alignment of qualifications, etc. Now, if I talk about the how many awarding bodies are there, so today there are about 76 awarding bodies, more than 150 assessment agencies. There are ITIs, about 14,600 ITIs there. There are about 10,000 training centers which are working under these awarding bodies and other bodies. There's government bodies also as part of this. If I talk about long-term training in all the ITI system, any training which is more than 1 year is called long-term training, and the entire ITI system we have more than 26 lakh seats today as we speak, and there are 1.26 lakh registered establishments for the apprenticeship training. More than 40,000 trainers, more than 11,000 assessors, and of course the number of qualifications and nurses we have talked about. So this NCVT system as such is a large system, and all are part of this. Now we are only hand-holding them. Most of the qualifications are developed by the ecosystem themselves as per their own requirements. We only align them to NSQF alignment and then make it part of the national qualification register, that is NQR. So that is what NCVT is doing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Taking this to the guest speaker from the government of Uttar Pradesh, I would now like to ask Mr. Andhra Vamsi, sir, how do you see bringing more and more emerging and digital technologies in skill and vocational education to cater to the rapid industrialization and globalization?
In one line, it's all market driven. And markets are really flexible, markets are volatile, and markets are dynamic. They are not static. So the scenario which was used in the last year cannot be the scenario this year. And we cannot predict the scenario for the next year also. It's better to be dynamic as per the existing needs and be on the dynamic pace. That's all.
And how it is important to have collaboration among skill agencies, institutions that will be able to.
We already have an organized setup for that. Okay. There are so many training partners or flexi partners or PTPs, whoever it may be. We have to be more and more qualitatively focused upon that particular thing, and we should be qualitative in our approach instead of filling up the numbers or filling the blanks for the so-called government priorities. It's not the way that we should conduct, but we should be more upon qualitative in our approach and ensure that the human resource is qualitatively developed.
I'll take the same question to Mr. Sridhar, sir. Your take on leveraging more and more emerging and digital technologies to cater to the rapid industrialization and matching the global industry needs?
You see, many emerging technologies, as Dr. Kalsi was mentioning, like IoT, artificial intelligence, cyber security, and many more which are there. But in addition to that, I want to slightly pitch one more thing. In a country like India, if we have to provide a child coming out of school opportunity to join the world of work, I feel that emerging technologies are there and we should surely work for that. And I would say rather many more things. If children coming with language are knowing foreign languages. So language is a big power. Learning language, different languages. Within country also different regional languages. These are big power, or I would say as a skill also that can be used for joining the world of work. But I feel that in a country like India, the spread is so vast and diverse. We should also think about some localized skill need and requirement of the industries, and how to map that with the potential in the form of what we call the demographic dividend, the children population over there. Because if you can think that there are many aspirational districts also, border districts also, their skill and vocational education is to be think in a very localized context. So that is also an aspect that I don't like to miss the chance of putting this point here. But surely the modern and emerging technologies are very important. And if we think in the global perspective, children with those skills in their hand and ability, and with good language and analytical skills and all, they can be proved as a good human resources for the globe. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastav. Let me take one more point that Dr. Kalsi has underlined during his response in the last question. The need of integration. I think both the National Education Policy 2020 and the National Skill Development Policy 2015 have laid great emphasis on the seamless integration of technical and vocational education with general education, including aspect of shared infrastructure. So let me take this question to Professor Vidyarthi. How do you feel that collaboration is important among skill agencies, institutions, and industry that will be able to cultivate 21st century skills among students, including critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and digital literacy?
Definitely, this is a very important component which India is lacking because the industry does not have so much confidence on educational institutions. And that's why we are importing a lot of technologies from outside rather than going for the Indian place. So if early integration is there, we are trying very best, but if there is some government policy on this coming out and saying that certain work has to, or like we are adopting the villages for development. Similarly, if the industry is forced to have some interaction or partnership with the industry, with the education institution, that would be really great, because it will help the universities to develop or devise or re-evaluate their own programs and curriculum, and the time is spent for the practical training at the place where we are looking for the manpower or human resource. Then it will be really very fruitful that we can make the tailor-made the human resource for which is going to best suited for the industry. At the same time, if industry will also be benefited, that they can sublet their programs which they are doing for the research and development in their organization. So through the young mind, these the products and the processes can be developed, and that directly going back to the industry. So definitely there is a need which has been missing for a longer time. Now it's time to work together, and definitely skill institutions will also help or learn the larger perspective if they again get associated with the university systems.
Thank you, Dr. Kalsi. Your take.
First of all, let us understand what do we mean by integration of vocational education into education. That means that there is no difference between a vocational subject and the educational subject, academic subject. And that is happening as of now. Now, it will start from this year itself, wherein the child will be given an option to select subjects. And whatever subjects are selected would be counted as part of the education. And credits would be allotted for skilling as well as for the academic qualification. And these credits would be interchangeable. You can add the credits, you can go from, say, one stream to the other stream, similarly from skilling to general education and general education to skilling. Multi-point entry and multi-point exit system would be possible. That is one point which I can say with confidence that will bring in a lot of the integration between the two systems. Otherwise, vocational education was considered as terminal education, but not anymore. That is the beauty of NEP 2020, which is being implemented now. Secondly, whatever qualifications are there in NQR, National Qualification Register, those qualifications are open for anyone. Anyone can just pick up those qualifications. Those are NSQF aligned qualifications. And whoever goes through those qualifications trains as per those qualifications can be given a Skill India certification. Though the NCVT and Skill India certification, if somebody wants NCVT certification, that has to be through the awarding body, but Skill India certification can be without the awarding body. And all those qualifications are just open. They are national property. Anybody can just pick up those qualifications and use those qualifications. Now, another thing which I would like to mention about the Industry 4.0, that mapping the qualifications development across sectors. Now, there are very indicative sectors which are there and indicative qualifications which are there. And if you talk about Industry 4.0, additive manufacturing technologies, design for additive manufacturing, advanced data analytics, and scientists for such analysis, then big data analysis, advanced mechatronic engineers. All these are there for, say, capital goods sector. Similarly, for automotive sector, there could be predictive automotive maintenance or electric vehicle maintenance technicians. Similarly, for IT/ITES sector, there could be cloud computing specialist, cyber data security specialist, digital quality engineer, digital twin engineer, factory automation engineer. Whatever I am counting here, they are part and parcel of not one, but many sectors. So Industry 4.0 would have different components which would be embedded across many sectors. Similarly, if I talk about the higher education, if I talk about technical education, the other day I was having a discussion with the president of NASSCOM, and she was mentioning that today the industry is missing the foundational skills. Normally, when the student goes out in the market for hiring, normally the foundational skills are the ones which are the most required. And they are working with AICTE so that these foundational skill courses, skill qualifications we call it, would be offered in different semesters, both in engineering as well as in polytechnic. So they can be offered as NSQF aligned skills, and as the student completes his Bachelor of Engineering or his diploma, he also gets the skill education which are very relevant for the industry, because these qualifications have been created by NASSCOM itself. And they are very relevant for the industry, and they are the qualifications which are really required by the industry in near future. 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, industry understands that. And therefore, these are the most relevant qualifications which are useful for the industry. So that's the way to integrate the futuristic qualifications into the vocational and education system.
Thank you, Dr. Kalsi, for highlighting these insights. Mr. Andhra Vamsi, Mission Director of UP Skill Development Mission. Sir, what are the challenges do you see in near future, and what is the way forward in skill and vocational education in the globalization era?
First challenge here, COVID, highly unpredictable viral strain, and that can always be the biggest challenge for the forthcoming years. Second challenge is the sustainability of the placement that which I have already discussed. Third thing, let us not be focused upon the numbers beyond the qualitative assessment. That's a major challenge. Fourth, the funding is never a problem here. Funds, it's a government priority, but optimal utilization of the resources or optimal utilization of the funds is the biggest challenge. But you have to use the right source of funds for the right things. Next, the fifth one is it should be a target specific thing, because, for example, a place like Western UP doesn't require much of the skill development mission programs because they are already enriched or they are already having their own industrial base. So the focus should be upon the target area, that is the Eastern UP and also the so-called Bundelkhand and Vindhyachal areas of Uttar Pradesh, as from the perspective of UP, that which I mean to say. If pan India, yes, okay, most of the focus should be upon the Eastern India and also the so-called Northern India, so-called Ganges belt. Apart from that, stringent labor laws, because we are not at all focusing upon the dignity of labor. The level of emolument that the skilled manpower is getting is really not up to the mark that we are expecting a growth for them. That is a major challenge. And more and more liquidity infusion into the market, because the more the liquidity into the markets is, the more the enterprise generation. Then only you can create a new enterprise, which means that new skilled labor can always. So we will return to our age-old methodology, that is the Keynesian concept of Keynesian economics. So that is the way forward, and these are the challenges which we are going to face in the near future, and we have to come up with these things.
Right. Challenges for all the organization and government agencies are almost the same, but let me go back to the NCERT speakers. Mr. Sridhar, what should be the way forward? What challenges do you see in the skill and technical and vocational education in the globalization era?
In fact, I tell you, as a challenge, I feel that be it foundational skill or technical education or vocational education, the kind of teaching learning process which is required now, that should depend much on experiential learning, because I am very surprised that when we come across certain cases that the students passing out from NIT, they are in a way or other, they are not getting satisfactory placement. And when we come to know that exactly what is the issue, why you are a civil engineering graduate from an NIT, and then what is, so the situation is very wanting. They appear for interview and they appear for many openings, but the issue is there. And as Dr. Kalsi was mentioning about the SOCHM discussion, really we are very short of the foundational skill there in children. And the challenge I also find in the form of assessment for assessing the progress in the learning of children about this skill and vocational education. So these are certain challenges, but surely the way forward that we as institution are contemplating or eyeing for is that we will be enacting a curriculum framework where we will be pitching for reduction in the content load, but increase the opportunity of experiential learning and project work, moving around in the vicinity, in the surrounding, looking for the solution of problems around the learner. So these kind of things will be very helpful, at least at the secondary stage. So this is the way forward that we are looking towards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sridhar. Professor Vidyarthi, same question to you. Your take on the challenges and way forward.
The challenges already, the earlier speakers has, told in precisely, and but we are, one or two points which I want to, mention over here, that the most of the institutions are facing, the problem of the renovation in their infrastructures, because most of the institutions have not been, revived and not really compatible with the new technologies which is coming out or which has been mentioned over here. And second things that, so that has to be clear-cut guidelines, as well as, the self-generating revenues scheme has to be in place by the institutions to overcome this. And second things, that the interaction basically, if somehow if the practical aspects where the graduates or any person is going to join this, so early exposure would be good enough. And due to the new technologies, or maybe the industry is not open up with the new technologies or whatever they are developing, it is not coming in the market. Once it is coming after the the development, or it is sellable product, then only this is coming out. So that's why there is a gap, and that gap has to be come out somehow with the things. Otherwise, now we hope that we will be provide the industry ready people.
Now, coming back to Dr. Kalsi, sir, what should be the way forward now, and your concluding remarks?
I would say that both in skilling as well as in education, we'll have to really restructure the entire thing. especially in skilling, the quality of skilling, reskilling, and upskilling, that is one of the most important challenges. And for meeting that challenge, you have to have absolutely quality trained trainers, master trainers, and also the assessors. Secondly, you need quality infrastructure for training these guys. Just to give you an example, if you are giving training on a very high-end equipment for the construction sector, then each of these machines would cost something like 30 to 40 lakh. And for training a person on these machines, now again, it's a humongous big task. So you need that kind of infrastructure if you really want to train people on that kind of qualification. Also in future, we will need multi-skilling and cross-sectoral skilling. Multi-skilling means that one person knows many jobs. For example, he can also be a cook and driver and a PN at the same time. Now, cross-sectoral skillings are those skills which for one qualification you need to cut across many sectors. For example, toy making. For toy making, you need to know rubber, you need to know electronics, you need to know IT, ITES, you need to know design. So it cuts across many sectors, then one complete qualification is formed. So that is another area. So in both these areas, we are working very, very closely. We have established special committees which are working on the multi-skill skilling and cross-sectoral skilling guidelines. So we'll be coming out with those very shortly. Also for future skills, we need to identify these skills. We need to start developing these skills. We need to think about various components of these skills which are to be embedded in various verticals. Some skills have to be horizontal. For example, the skills for PWD sectors. Whenever we develop any skill, we need to keep in mind the people with disability. And whatever can be done by them, so those skills can then be modified, suitably modified for skilling that kind of manpower. So that is another big challenge. And the last thing which I would say, that when we are talking about the skilling, then we have to recognize the NSQF aligned skill qualifications by government, by PSUs, by employers, by contractors, and by the industry. They should adopt NSQF aligned qualifications. They should adopt the skilled manpower for any job. Unless they do that, the skilled manpower would not gain that importance. Today, if you want somebody to hire, especially in the private sector, somebody hires the manpower, they'll never ask him whether you are NSQF aligned, or you're skilled or not skilled. They'll say, "Isko le lo, sikha lenge, baad mein sikha lenge." So that has to stop, and we all have to demand that all of us, we get skilled and we get NSQF aligned qualifications. And the Skill India mission of Honorable Prime Minister, it is really implemented in letter and spirit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And looking at the future industrialization multiplied by emerging technology breakthroughs, higher and technical educational institutions, skill development missions, administrators, and policymakers need to actually conceptualize specialized, skill-intensive, technology-based courses to stay relevant in the globalization era. With this, I conclude today's panel discussion, Innovation in Technical and Vocational Education, Creating Skilled Manpower for Industry 4.0 and Self-Reliant India, part of the second edition of ET Government Education, Innovation and Skill Summit 2021. On behalf of ET Government, I sincerely thank our guest panelists. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you everyone for bringing out the important points to think over. A very insightful discussion. Stay tuned and keep tweeting using the hashtag ETGEISS. Now we'll take a short break.